Section 22 of Astounding Stories 16, April 1931. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Beth Thomas. Astounding Stories 16, April 1931, by Various. The Ghost World, by Sewell Peaslee Wright, Part 1. I was asleep when our danger was discovered, but I knew the instant the attention signal sounded that the situation was serious. Kincaid, my second officer, had a cool head, and he would not have called me except in a tremendous emergency. "Hanson speaking," I snapped into the microphone. "What's up, Mr. Kincaid?" "A field of meteorites sweeping into our path, sir." Kincaid's voice was tense. "I have altered our course as much as I dared, and am reducing speed at emergency rate, but this is the largest swarm of meteorites I have ever seen. I am afraid we must pass through at least a section of it." "With you in a moment, Mr. Kincaid." I dropped the microphone and snatched up my robe, knotting its cord about me as I hurried out of my stateroom. In those days, interplanetary ships did not have their auras of repulsion rays to protect them from meteorites, it must be remembered. 2 skins of metal were all that lay between the Ertak and all the dangers of space. I took the companionway to the navigating room 2 steps at a time, and fairly burst into the room. Kincaid was crouched over the 2 charts that pictured the space around us, microphone pressed to his lips. Through the plate glass partition I could see the men in the operating room tensed over their wheels and levers and dials. Kincaid glanced up as I entered, and motioned with his free hand towards the charts. One glance convinced me that he had not overestimated our danger. The space to left and right and above and below was fairly peppered with tiny pricks of greenish light that moved slowly across the milky faces of the charts. From the position of the ship, represented as a glowing red spark, and measuring the distances roughly by the means of fine black lines graved in both directions upon the surface of the chart, it was evident to any understanding observer that disaster, of a most terrible kind, was imminent. Kincaid muttered into his microphone, and out of the tail of my eye I could see his orders obeyed on the instant by the men in the operating room. I could feel the peculiar sickening surge that told of speed being reduced, and of the course being altered. But the cold, brutally accurate charts before me assured me that no action we dared take would save us from the meteorites. "We're in for it, Mr. Kincaid. Continue to reduce speed as much as possible, and keep bearing away as at present. I believe we can avoid the thickest portion of the field, but we shall have to take our chances with the fringe." "Yes, sir," said Kincaid, without lifting his eyes from the chart. His voice was calm and businesslike now. With the responsibility on my shoulders as commander, he was the efficient, level-headed thinking machine that had endeared him to me as both fellow officer and friend. Leaving the charts to Kincaid, I sounded the general emergency signal, calling every man and officer of the Ertak's crew to his post, and began giving orders through the microphone. "Mr. Corey," Corey was my first officer, "please report at once to the navigating room. Mr. Hendricks, make the rounds of all duty posts, please, and give special attention to the disintegrator ray operators. The ray generators are to be started at once, full speed." Hendricks, I might say, was a junior officer, and a very good one, though quick-tempered and excitable, failings of youth. He had only recently shipped with us to replace Anderson Croy, but that has already been recorded. These preparations made, I glanced at the twin charts again. The peppering of tiny green lights, each of which represented a meteoritic body, had definitely shifted in relation to the position of the strongly glowing red spark that was the Ertak. But a quick comparison of the 2 charts showed that we would be certain to pass through, again I use land terms to make my meaning clear, the upper right fringe of the field. The great cluster of meteorites was moving in the same direction as ourselves now. Kincaid's change of course had settled that matter nicely. Naturally, this was the logical course, since, should we come in contact with any of them, the impact would bear a relation to only the difference in our speeds, instead of the sum, as would be the case if we struck at a wide angle. It was difficult to stand without grasping a support of some kind, and walking was almost impossible, for the reduction of our tremendous speed, and even the slightest change of direction, placed terrific strains upon the ship and everything in it. Space ships at space speeds must travel like the old-fashioned bullets if those within are to feel at ease. "I believe, Mr. Kincaid, it might be well to slightly increase the power in the gravity pads," I suggested. Kincaid nodded and spoke briefly into his microphone. An instant later I felt my weight increase perhaps 50%, and despite the inertia of my body, opposed to both the change in speed and direction of the Ertak, I could now stand without support and could walk without too much difficulty. The door of the navigating room was flung open, and Corey entered, his face alight with curiosity and eagerness. An emergency meant danger, and few beings in the universe have loved danger more than Corey. "We're in for it, Mr. Corey," I said with a nod toward the charts. "Swarm of meteorites, and we can't avoid them." "Well, we've dodged through them before, sir," smiled Corey. "We can do it again." "I hope so, but this is the largest field of them I have ever seen. Look at the charts, they're thicker than flies." Corey glanced at the charts, slapped Kincaid across his bowed, tense shoulders, and laughed aloud. "Trust the old Ertak to worm her way through, sir," he said. "The ray crews are on duty, I presume?" "Yes, but I doubt that the rays will be of much assistance to us, particularly if these are stony meteorites, and as you know, the odds are about 10 to 1 against their being of ferrous composition. The rays, deducting the losses due to the utter lack of a conducting medium, will be insufficient protection. They will help, of course. The iron meteorites they will take care of effectively, but the conglomerate nature of the stony meteorites does not make them particularly susceptible to the disintegrating rays. We shall do what we can, but our success will depend largely upon good luck, or divine providence." "At any rate, sir," replied Corey, and his voice had lost some of its lightness, "we are upon routine patrol and not upon special mission. If we do crack up, there is no emergency call that will remain unanswered." "No," I said dryly. "There will be just another lost in space report in the records of the service, and the Ertak's name will go up on the tablet of lost ships. In any case, we have done and shall do what we can. In 10 minutes we shall know all there is to know. That about right, Mr. Kincaid?" 10 minutes?" Kincaid studied the charts with narrowed eyes, mentally balancing speed and distance. "We should be within the danger area in about that length of time, sir," he answered. "And out of it, if we come out, 3 or 4 minutes later." "We'll come out of it," said Corey positively. I walked heavily across the room and studied the charts again. Space above and below, to the right and left of us, was powdered with the green points of light. Corey joined me, his feet thumping with the unaccustomed weight given him by the increase in gravity. As he bent over the charts, I heard him draw in his breath sharply. Kincaid looked up, Corey looked up, I looked up. The glance of each man swept the faces, read the eyes of the other two. Then, with one accord, we all three glanced up at the clocks. More properly, at the 12-figured dial of the Earth clock, for none of us had any great love for the metric universal system of timekeeping. 10 minutes, less than that now. "Mr. Corey," I said as calmly as I could, "you will relieve Mr. Kincaid as navigating officer. Mr. Kincaid, present my compliments to Mr. Hendricks and ask him to explain the situation to the crew. You will instruct the disintegrator ray operators in their duties and take charge of their activities. Start operation at your discretion. You understand the necessity." "Yes, sir." Kincaid saluted sharply, and I returned his salute. We did not shake hands, the Earth gesture of, strangely enough, both greeting and farewell. But we both realized that this might well be a final parting. The door closed behind him, and Corey and I were left together to watch the creeping hands of the Earth clock, the twin charts with their thick spatter of green lights, and the 2 fiery red sparks, one on each chart, that represented the Ertak, sweeping recklessly towards the swarming danger ahead. In other accounts of my experiences in the Special Patrol Service, I feel that I have written too much about myself. After all, I have run my race, a retired commander of the service, and an old man, with the century mark well behind me. My only use is to record, in this fashion, some of those things the service accomplished in the old days, when the worlds of the universe were strange to each other, and space travel was still an adventure to many. The universe is not interested in old men, it is concerned only with youth and action. It forgets that once we were young men, strong, impetuous, daring. It forgets what we did, but that has always been so. It always will be so. John Hanson, retired commander of the Special Patrol Service, is fit only to amuse the present generation with his tales of bygone days. Well, so be it. I am content. I have lived greatly. Certainly I would not exchange my memories of those bold, daring days, even for youth and strength again, had I to live that youth and waste that strength in this softened, gilded age. But no more of this. It is too easy for an old man to rumble on about himself. It is only the young John Hanson, commander of the Ertak, who can interest those who may pick up and read what I am writing here. I did not waste the minutes measured by that clock, grouped with our other instruments in the navigating room of the Ertak. I wrote hastily in the ship's log, stating the facts briefly and without feeling. If we came through, the log would read better thus. If not, and by some strange chance it happened to human eyes, then the universe would know at least that the Ertak's officers did not flinch from even such a danger. As I finished the entry, Corey spoke. "Kincaid's estimate was not far off, sir," he said with a swift glance at the clock. "Here we go." It was less than half a minute short of the 10 estimated by Kincaid. I nodded and bent over the television disc, one of the huge hooded affairs we used in those days. Widening the field to the greatest angle and with low power, I inspected the space before us on all sides. The chart, operated by super radio reflexes, had not lied about the danger into which we were had passed. We were in the middle of a veritable swarm of meteorites of all sizes. They were not large. I believe the largest I saw had a mass of not more than 3 or 4 times that of the Ertak herself. Some of the smaller bodies were only 50 or 60 feet in diameter. They were jagged and irregular in shape, and they seemed to spin at varying speeds like tiny worlds. As I watched, fixing my view now on the space directly in our path, I saw that our disintegrator ray men were at work. Deep in the bowels of the Ertak, the moan of the ray generators had deepened in note. I could even feel the slight vibration beneath my feet. One of the meteorites slowly crumbled on top, the dust of disintegration hovering in a compact mass about the body. More and more of it melted away. The spinning motion grew irregular, eccentric, as the centre of gravity was changed by the action of the ray. Another ray, 2 more, centred on the wobbling mass. It was directly in our path, looming up larger and larger every second. Faster and faster it melted, the rays eating into it from 4 sides. But it was perilously near now. I had to reduce power in order to keep all of it within the field of my disc. The thing vanished, before the very nose of the ship, not an instant too soon. I glanced up at the surface temperature indicator and saw the big black hand move slowly for a degree or 2 and stop. It was a very sensitive instrument, and registered even the slight friction of our passage through the disintegrated dust of the meteorite. Our rays were working desperately, but disintegrator rays are not nearly so effective in space as in an atmosphere of some kind. Half a dozen times it seemed we must crash head-on into one of the flying bodies. But our speed was reduced now to such an extent that we were going but little faster than the meteorites, and this fact was all that saved us. We had more time for utilising our rays. We nosed upwards through the trailing fringe of the swarm in safety. The great field of meteorites was now below and ahead of us. We had won through. The Ertak was safe, and... "There seems to be another directly above us, sir," commented Corey quietly, speaking for the first time since we had entered the area of danger. "I believe your disc is not picking it up." "Thank you, Mr. Corey," I said. While operating on an entirely different principle, his 2 charts had certain very definite advantages. They showed the entire space around us instead of a portion. I picked up the meteorite he had mentioned without difficulty. It was a large body, about 3 times the mass of the Ertak, and some distance above us, a laggard in the group we had just eluded. "Will it coincide with our path at any point, Mr. Corey?" I asked doubtfully. The television disc could not, of course, give me this information. "I believe so, yes," replied Corey, frowning over his charts. "Are the rays on it, sir?" "Yes, all of them, I judge, but they are making slow work of it." I fell silent, bending lower over the great hooded disc. There were a score of rays playing upon the surface of the meteorite. A halo of dust hung around the rapidly diminishing body, but still the mass melted all too slowly. Pressing the attention signal for Kincaid, I spoke sharply into the microphone. "Mr. Kincaid, is every ray on that large meteorite above us?" "Yes, sir," he replied instantly. "Full power?" "Yes, sir." "Very well. Carry on, Mr. Kincaid." I turned to Corey. He had just glanced from his charts to the clock, with its jerking second hand, and back to his charts. "They'll have to do it in the next 10 seconds, sir," he said. "Otherwise—" Corey shrugged, and his eyes fixed with a peculiar fascinated stare on the charts. He was looking death squarely in the eyes. 10 seconds. It was not enough. I had watched the rays working, and I knew their power to disintegrate this death-dealing stone that was hurtling along above us while we rose helplessly into its path. I did not ask Corey if it was possible to alter the course enough and quickly enough to avoid that fateful path. Had it been possible without tearing the Ertak to pieces with the strain of it, Corey would have done it seconds ago. I glanced up swiftly at the relentless, jerking second hand. 7 seconds gone. 3 seconds more. The rays were doing all that could be expected of them. There was only a tiny fragment of the meteorite left, and it was dwindling swiftly, but our time was passing even more rapidly. The bit of rock loomed up at me from the disk. It seemed to fly up into my face to meet me. "Got us, Corey," I said hoarsely. "Goodbye, old man." I think he tried to reply. I saw his lips open, the flash of the bright light from the ethon tubes on his big white teeth. Then there was a crash that shook the whole ship. I shot into the air. I remember falling terribly. A blinding flash of light that emanated from the very centre of my brain, a sickening sense of utter catastrophe, and blackness. End of section 22.